The movie opens in 18th century Austria, where we see a little kid trying to soothe a crying toddler. Just then, the kid is called by someone, so he walks away. At this point, a woman who had been watching them approaches and takes the baby into her arms. The little guy eventually calms down, so she removes her rosary and places it around his neck. After that, she arrives at the top of a waterfall, and this is when the movie takes a dark turn. The woman suddenly throws the baby to his death for no apparent reason. The woman then rushes to a nearby church and admits that she has committed a crime. Later, we discover that the woman has been brutally executed as punishment for her actions. Her lifeless body is displayed publicly in a chair in the woods, with her head locked in a cage. An unseen figure cuts off one of her fingers before wrapping it in a cloth. The next day, we meet our protagonist, Agnes, a 17-year-old peasant girl. It turns out that today is her wedding day, and she seems very excited. Later, Agnes, her mother, and brother Lucas travel to another village with a wagon full of dowry for her future husband. They soon arrive at the wedding venue, where Agnes marries a man named Wolf. The celebration is joyful, with the villagers lifting Agnes above their heads as she laughs with delight. Shortly after, Wolf's mother, Ganglin, makes Agnes wear an apron and also hands her a mock baby. This is to signify her transition into married life and her future role as a mother and a housewife. Later, while the villagers are dancing, Wolf tells Agnes he has something to show her. He then blindfolds her and leads her to a house that he has purchased for them as a wedding gift. Agnes had assumed they would stay with her mother-in-law, but Wolf explains that his brother will inherit the house after their mother. Therefore, he spent all his savings and took a loan to purchase this place. Agnes is concerned about how they will pay off the loan, but Wolf assures her not to worry. He then takes her inside, and Agnes is impressed by the size of the house. In the evening, the villagers are still partying and getting drunk. Here, Agnes notices a drunk Wolf getting close to his friend, Lenz. Wolf compliments him, saying he's very handsome, and Lenz responds that he likes him as well. Shortly after, Agnes' family decides to leave and return to their village. Her brother Lucas then hands her a gift wrapped in cloth, which turns out to be the severed finger of the woman who was publicly beheaded. He claims it's a lucky charm that will help her become pregnant soon. This excites Agnes, and the siblings express how much they'll miss each other. Upon returning to her new home, Agnes kisses the severed finger and places it under her mattress as a good luck charm. She then prays to God, asking for blessings so that she can be a good wife and have children. Soon after, Wolf returns home drunk, and Agnes prepares for their first night together. She tries to get intimate with him, but to her surprise, he rejects her advances and turns her away. He instead begins to please himself before eventually falling asleep. The next morning, Agnes wakes up to find Wolf no longer in bed. She desperately searches for him throughout the house and stable, but he's nowhere to be found. She then gets dressed and runs into the woods, where she soon becomes lost. All of a sudden, Agnes comes across a drawing posted on a tree that depicts the fate of the woman who threw the baby over the waterfall and was executed. A short distance away, she discovers the woman's corpse in a chair while her head is locked in a cage. Shortly after, Agnes finally finds Wolf, his mother, and a group of villagers fishing in a pond. Ganglin asks her to help, and Agnes starts working, but she struggles since she has never done this before. Soon, the church bell rings, so Agnes stays on her knees for a long time and prays. An annoyed Ganglin tells her to return to work, insisting that she has already prayed enough. During lunch, Agnes and Ganglin distribute bread to the workers. One of the men requests 2 pieces, stating that he is very hungry, so Agnes kindly hands him the extra piece. However, Ganglin takes it back and tells the worker to go away. In the evening, Wolf shows Agnes how to get home from the pond and asks her to wear work-suitable clothes from now on. When Agnes returns home, she begins her other duties, which include milking Wolf's goat. At night, Agnes kisses the severed finger and places it under the mattress, hoping that her husband will touch her this time. Unfortunately, when Wolf comes to bed, she tries to get close to him, but he once again refuses her. This makes Agnes feel very distraught, so she heads outside and cries in the darkness. The next morning, she visits the church and prays to the wax doll of baby Jesus, asking for a child. Later, Agnes and Ganglin head to a nearby river to wash their clothes. Our heroine is soon approached by a pregnant woman there. It turns out she works for them, and the two quickly begin to bond. While returning home, the two decide to rest in the woods, but they quickly fall asleep. However, Agnes wakes up alone in the evening and rushes home. She is shocked to see Ganglin preparing dinner. She offers to help, but the old woman becomes enraged and asks where she has been. Agnes claims she was at church, but Ganglin responds that the Lord doesn't favor women who fail to cook for their husbands. She also rudely informs the girl that the plant she has kept is ugly and makes the house dirty. After Ganglin leaves, Agnes asks her husband if his mother will come every day, but he says he doesn't know. She also wonders if Ganglin even likes her, but Wolf assures her that she's just a little strict and has an attitude because she is from another generation. Night soon arrives, but the outcome is the same as the previous ones, with no intimacy between the couple. Agnes feels frustrated and doesn't know what to do to get her husband to notice her. She walks to the back room where she has set up an altar. She then begins to pray to God while a butterfly crawls on her face. The next morning, Agnes gets up early and goes to the pond, hoping to catch some fish before anyone else arrives. Unfortunately, she is unable to catch any and instead becomes stuck in the mud. Wolf arrives with some workers and becomes very worried when he sees Agnes alone in the mud. He claims the mud is treacherous and that many people have drowned there. Agnes explains that she wanted to make up for not cooking yesterday, but he takes her away from the pond to avoid scaring the fish. That night, someone knocks on Wolf's door to inform him that something has happened to Lenz. Hearing this, Wolf freaks out and immediately leaves the house. Soon after, Agnes hears a woman screaming terrifyingly. This scares her so much that she heads to the neighbor's house to find out what happened. To her surprise, Agnes notices several men outside Lenz's house and discovers that he has hanged himself. Lenz's mother begs them not to take his body, but despite her pleas, the men take the corpse and load it into a cart before departing. Agnes then returns home, terrified, and prays to the Almighty Lord to keep her safe from all evil. The next day, the priest addresses the villagers, explaining that Lenz cannot be buried, because killing oneself is a greater sin than murder. Meanwhile, the woman who threw her baby into the waterfall was at least saved because she confessed her sins before being executed, so she will be forgiven and accepted into heaven. However, Lenz's soul is now lost forever and destined for hell. After Agnes leaves the church, she sees Lenz's corpse left to rot in a dump with the bodies of other previous sinners. Later on, while working in the fields, Agnes suddenly gets her period. This frustrates her greatly, as she had hoped to become a mother through her prayers to God. In the afternoon, she distributes bread to the workers, and her pregnant friend requests a double portion since she is eating for two. But, due to Ganglin's presence, she is forced to refuse. Her mother-in-law rudely tells her not to worry, saying they should be grateful that she was even allowed to work with them. Later, an upset Agnes is on her way home when she hurts herself inside the thorny bushes. She even uses the thorn branches to hurt her tongue and tortures herself. She then lies down near the beheaded woman and rests for a while. In the evening, Ganglin complains to Wolf about Agnes still not returning home. She expresses her concern that the girl can't perform her duties or cook properly. Wolf asks his mother to give her some time, but Ganglin responds that he should have married someone from the same village who could handle all of the work and bear his children. Unbeknownst to them, Agnes hears the conversation from outside the door and begins to cry, as Ganglin has no idea that her son doesn't even try to have a child. Rather than returning home, Agnes returns to the beheaded woman and spends the night singing to her. In the morning, Agnes returns to her childhood home and watches her mother and brother eat breakfast through the window. Shortly after, Lucas arrives at the stable and finds her sleeping there. Later, Agnes tells them that she's scared to live at her husband's place, but Mom tells her that she can't allow her to stay, but promises to visit her from time to time. In the afternoon, Wolf arrives and asks Agnes to come home with him. But when she refuses, he drags her along with Lucas's help and forcefully carries her back to the house. Upon returning, Agnes refuses to do her chores and spends the day sleeping and praying. Ganglin tells Agnes to get better, but she appears to have no desire to continue living. The mother-in-law tries to dress her so that they can take her for a checkup, but Agnes snatches the clothing and attempts to dress herself. Then, when she is alone after doing the checkup, she walks home alone. Right when she discovers an unattended baby crying by the river, an overjoyed Agnes believes the child is a gift from God and takes it home. However, Ganglin is enraged and demands that she return the baby to where she found it, as the parents must be looking for it. With no other option, Agnes abandons the baby where she found it, hoping that the parents will soon return. Later that night, she is in bed praying for a child, while Wolf is seen dancing and drinking with the villagers elsewhere. Overcome with depression, Agnes takes some substance from under her bed and continues to pray to God. Shortly after that, she begins trembling and experiencing hallucinations. This is when she sees something in the soil outside and notices herself being buried. Suddenly, she wakes up to find Wolf gripping her face. A frustrated Wolf admits that he has no idea what to do with her and then walks out. Once alone, Agnes consumes the substance again. Wolf then returns and considers taking her to the checkup place again, but Agnes believes she's going to die. She requests that he fetch the priest instead so that she can confess her sins. Panicked, Wolf agrees and goes out. But he soon returns, informing Agnes that the priest is not at home and that they can see him tomorrow. Fearing she's going to die without confessing her sins, Agnes finally admits that she took the rat poison. Wolf is shocked to hear this and forces her to vomit right away. Fortunately, he manages to get all the poison out of her stomach before it's too late. After some time, Ganglin arrives and discovers that Agnes is still alive but too weak. The old woman assists her in getting up and changing her clothes. After that, Wolf picks up Agnes in his arms and takes her to her mother's house. He explains to his mother-in-law that Agnes consumed rat poison and believes she is in the devil's grasp. Wolf decides that it is best for Agnes to stay in her mother's home in peace rather than forcing her to stay with him. He then says goodbye to his sick wife and leaves the house. The scene then cuts to the following morning, where Agnes appears to be in better health than before. She prays and cleans up after herself. After getting dressed, Agnes quietly says her goodbyes to her family members before leaving the house. Shortly after, she arrives in the woods and discovers a group of children playing. She asks a little boy to lead her to a shrine in the woods in exchange for payment, and he agrees. When they arrive, Agnes asks the boy to pray alongside her, to which he complies. They then enter the shrine and begin praying, but then, all of a sudden, she stabs the boy in the neck. The boy pleads with her not to hurt him, but she eventually silences him. As the boy dies, Agnes tells him that he will no longer be able to sin and is now an angel in the eyes of God. She then proceeds to the church and confesses that she has committed a crime. That night, Agnes receives a haircut. The next day, she visits a priest for confession. She admits to judging her mother-in-law, neglecting the animals in her stable, and causing misfortune for those who loved her. Agnes states that she tried but failed to be a good wife to Wolf, so she took rat poison because she thought no one could help her. Agnes also apologizes for killing the boy, claiming that she believed it would save her soul. She then begs God not to send her to hell and seeks forgiveness. In the end, the priest decides to cleanse her sins and tells her that she has been forgiven in the eyes of God. Hearing this, Agnes feels immense relief, and she begins laughing and crying uncontrollably. In the next scene, people are hanging drawings of her crime in the trees, as they did with the previous woman. Agnes is wrapped in animal skin and dragged through the village. She is soon brought to an altar, where she will be executed in front of a crowd. They make her sit down in a chair and place a hood over her head. Among the onlookers is Agnes's husband, who looks sad. Here, Agnes gracefully accepts her fate and begins singing a soothing song. Agnes is eventually beheaded. After her death, the crowd's mood changes abruptly from somber to joyful. The blood spurting from Agnes's neck is collected in a bucket, and the townspeople even pay to dip their cups and bowls in so they can drink her blood. They believe it is sacred, as she's done the confession, and it will bring them good luck. The villagers keep dancing and celebrating while her head is mounted on a pole beside her lifeless body. The movie ends with a note stating that it is based on the real-life story of a woman named Eva Liesl Phelan. It turns out that in the 17th and 18th centuries, people who wanted to die would commit murder to ensure their execution. In Christianity, taking one's own life was considered the worst of all sins, and it prevented a person from receiving a proper burial. However, if someone committed murder and repented of their sins, it was believed they would be granted entry into heaven. Thus, we reach the end of this film. Thanks for watching. You can like this video to support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you in the next video. Goodbye.